I started playing when I was like 4.5 years old. And I think definitely in high school it's been something that I've started to enjoy more. Since I've become like so singularly focused on math, it's really nice to have something like a different type of thinking and to like break up the day or whatever. So I guess that's what violin is to me.
I think problem solving, critical thinking, all of this, math is there in every aspect of our lives. Same like music as well. They are very interconnected.
Critical thinking is one of the most important ways in which we prepare people to contribute to the world.
The mathematical skills that come from our students participating in the Swayfer Math Olympiad give them those critical thinking skills to be able to approach this complex world in which we live.
I became professor here in '79 and immediately asked my colleagues in math department about creating mathematical Olympiad.
I was in 5th grade the first time I took the Swayfer Math Olympiad, and my parents just asked me, oh, do you want to miss a day of school and go and do this? And I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never seen like a proof problem before, so I think I basically just guessed yes or no on all the questions and then walked out like an hour in or something.
We are the largest essay-type competition in the United States. We don't have prerequisites, pre-registrations. Anyone who is at high school or junior high school is allowed to participate. We register them as they come, right here on campus, and we give them only 5 problems and 4 hours of time to solve them. We grade their ideas, not their answers.
First year when we came back, I didn't really have any expectations, but I started doing more proofs and I started liking them more. So the first time I came back, it was in 8th grade, and that year, I guess because I didn't expect to do well and I had like no pressure at all, I actually ended up tying for gold that year.
I think what's so amazing about the Olympiad itself is that the problems that the students are tackling are not the kind of calculations that you remember from school. They're mostly word problems that require creative problem solving. And so a lot of times you'll see 8th graders winning gold medals.
I think maybe the math that we're introduced to in school and stuff, and especially when you're in elementary school, is not as fun for really everyone, because it's more just, oh, here, do some like computations and memorize your times tables or whatever. But I think this type of math, the type that's like more creative, is definitely for everyone, and I think everyone can enjoy that if they are introduced to it.
There's also partial credit, I think, which is really cool. Part of your solution may actually be correct or unique, even if you don't get the whole thing. And so that feedback that the judges give is personalized in that way. And so they can see that, oh, hey, this part of it was actually, we've never seen that before, and that's amazing. And you got the rest of it wrong, but that's okay because this was really cool.
Passion has to be fed by the subject or object of infatuation.
It's a shame if someone goes all the way through high school and thinks that all of mathematics is already known and that it was all chiseled in stone thousands of years ago.
High school was the point where it kind of solidified. It went from a passion to, I am a young mathematician and this is what I love.
I think the Olympiad shaped what my future is going to be.
Colorado Math Olympiad provides this enrichment, opportunity to touch beautiful mathematics to all of the kids, not just kids who happen to live in major metropolitan area and have a good teachers.
I thought it would be a great opportunity to be able to get to know people and also be able to test our math skills.
Real math is about the reasoning, the course of logic that leads you to be able to guarantee you have an answer, and not just to come up with it, but to communicate it to someone else.
They had really like high level word choice and like just figuring out what the question was asking was really difficult.
They'll be exposed to ways of reasoning that they hadn't thought of before, some beautiful area of mathematics.
The questions, sometimes they didn't really make sense, and they had to make you really think.
These problems could probably, in theory, be solved by a 6th grader as well as a high schooler.
I just tried to put everything that I knew how to do on there, and even if I didn't know the answer, I just tried to get as close as I could.
Students some of them get frustrated because they are used to seeing things they can do.
I eventually, after the 5th question, just wrote a poem.
This is stuff that when you first get into the medium is very difficult.
I think I did pretty good. I didn't know mainly what they're talking about, but I tried to use what I did know.
Here's an example from this year's Olympiad. Mark and Julia are playing a tiling game on a rectangular checkerboard, taking turns putting 1-by-1 squares on the board. After each has made exactly 100 moves, covering 200 squares on the board, here's how the winner is determined. Julia wins if the tiling can be completed by dominoes, 1-by-2 rectangles made of 2 squares. Otherwise, Mark wins. The challenge is to find a strategy for one of the players to win regardless of what moves the other makes. Hint, Mark goes first. We'll come back to this problem later.
Well, let me start working on the problems for Colorado Mathematical Olympiad. Many good ideas came to me right here. I think we'll have a very good set. And of course, ultimate judge of the set is a student. We'll see how they do. So, isn't that the shortest problem ever in the Olympiad, half a line? Mm-hmm. We strive to present new problems. It's just impossible for me to know all of the problems that have ever been used around the world. But I try to.
These problems have the unique character, for the most part, that even if you can't do it, when somebody shows you how to do it, you say, oh, I see that.
At least one of the questions is still, to me, like kind of the archetypal Olympiad question. If you paint a plane in 2 colors, prove that you can find 2 points that are exactly 1 inch apart that are the same color. And that's a problem that to most people doesn't even sound like math. There's some things in there, points and planes, that sound like math. You can explain this to somebody. You can explain what plane means, you can explain what points mean, and you can explain that we're talking about abstract concepts, not things that you can actually draw. And so it doesn't really jibe with what most people consider mathematics. And yet this is exactly what's on the Olympiad, and this is real mathematics. It's not only being able to understand that problem, but having the creativity to come up with a solution and then explaining why it's a solution. And the solution I can give you in 1 word, well, 2 words, equilateral triangle. So if you draw an equilateral triangle, it has 3 vertices. And so because 2 of the 3 must be the same color, you've solved the problem.
We offer the same problems for everyone who comes, grade 6 to 12. That doesn't allow us, thank God, to use topics to test knowledge, because it would be disadvantageous to middle school students, right? They simply know less.
Where does that come from? Where does equilateral triangle come from if you've read about painting the plane in 2 colors? Well, that's the creativity, that's the beauty of these kinds of problems. And for, like I said, most people, that's not what mathematics means. And so that's why I think this is a great contest. Show people that this is what we're doing.
But the fact that we are successful, judge for yourself, we had an 8th grader winning first prize. Bryce Herd won first prize as an 8th grader. So it works.
Someone asked if we could use calculators.
I was actually asked that many times. May I use a calculator? And I would tell them, sure, makes a good straight edge.
It's very unusual for someone to solve all the problems on the Olympiad. And so even the very top winners probably have something that they'll learn.
By the way, remember Mark and Julia? Well, Julia won by completing the tiling by dominoes. Her strategy was to make a template before the game. The template shows how to tile the entire board by dominoes, no matter what moves Mark makes. When Mark places the tile, Julia puts the template down to determine which domino contains the tile, and places hers to complete the domino. After 100 turns, with 100 dominoes on the board, the template shows how the game can be finished with dominoes.
Students are bright, especially at the top. And if they think that we were unfair toward them, it's not that they will hate us. That's fine. They may hate mathematics as a result.
Every paper is read by at least 2 people, and we are briefed in advance as to what a solution is. And we teach new judges, look, if you're reading something you don't understand, just give it to somebody else, it's okay. But generally we can look at it and then we grade it.
Being invited to be a judge on the panel for the Colorado Math Olympiad last year was amazing, and I was definitely looking forward to getting back to it this year. I wasn't going to miss it for anything.
Most of the judges come from my alumni.
I think that judging is really, it's challenging, I guess. You want to give every competitor a fair score. I think that it's a little bit enlightening to see what all the different people's ideas, interpretations of the problem. They're not all the same.
Sometimes there's papers that are almost entirely blank, in which case they weren't very invested. They weren't able to understand what the problems were asking.
Certainly the most exciting thing when you're grading papers is to come across a brilliant or unexpected solution.
The problem committee picks out a set of problems. We solve them. We know the solutions. Alex goes over the solutions, some alternatives and things like that, and some kid comes up with a solution we never thought of.
That sort of makes the whole experience worthwhile.
3 or 4 judges run off to another room and get a blackboard and start sorting out what the kid said and making sure it's solid, making sure it's tight.
You feel like all day you're sort of sifting through, painting for gold or something. And so when you do find it, it's exciting.
My parents predetermined that I would be a pianist and composer, and from 6 to 14 I studied music, played piano. And at 14 I already won a couple of awards in Moscow University Olympiad, and I decided to be a mathematician. So I'm a mathematician only because somebody offered the Olympiad for me. And so I felt I have to pay back. What happened in '83 was this. I was teaching a number theory course. And I asked my students, would you like to create Colorado Math Olympiad for middle and high school students with me?
I still remember the first problem of the first year. It's a classic one with the hiker. Hiker leaves his tent. He hikes 10 miles south. He hikes 10 miles west, 10 miles north. He's back in front of his tent. List everywhere on Earth where his tent could be pitched.
We go south and north down meridians and going west along the parallels. North Pole would work. You go 10 miles down meridian, then along the parallel 10 miles west and back to the North Pole. However, near the South Pole, it's possible to hit very small parallels whose whole length is 10 miles. So you go down meridian 10 miles, hit that small parallel, go west 10 miles, and that is a complete circle. And then you retract your steps 10 miles north, so that point will work. And therefore, every point of that parallel. Then a little bit lower, you can hit even smaller parallel with the length of a circle 5 miles. So you go down 10 miles, then you go west 2 circles, 2 times along that parallel, and return back. So every point on that parallel works, and so on. And so the answer is North Pole and infinitely many parallels near the South Pole. You see, when I wanted to do the first Olympiad. My engineering dean didn't want to do it. So I went to the dean of the School of Education, Dennis Smithog, and Dennis said, I'll be happy to be the host.
Well, what specifically do you want me to do? He says, well, just sponsor it. And I asked it a couple different other ways, and finally I figured out he just wanted to say that the School of Education was sponsoring this event. And I says, sure.
It was such a success that my engineering dean told me, we are going to do it now here in engineering. So second Olympiad was offered as Olympiad of the College of Engineering. And I sent a letter requesting the dean to raise prices for the third Olympiad. He called me in his office, and the dean told me, we're not up to doing the Olympiads. I want you to stop that. One can make an argument in your tenure process that you do this Olympiad at the expense of acceptable research and curriculum development. I asked him, do you have problems with my research? He said, no. Do you have problems with my teaching? He says, no. Then I said, Dean, what I do on my free time is none of your business. I got up and walked out of that office. I went to Dennis Smithog, Dean of the School of Education, and I told him, Dennis, if you say no, I'll move the Olympiad out.
For kids in music, there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of competitions. So they can find outlets. But something like math, where do you show what you can do and where do you get rewarded for it?
He agreed to give it up after first Olympiad because he wasn't doing it for perks or glory. And he agreed to take it again, and he hosted the third Olympiad in '86.
School of Education sponsoring a mathematical Olympiad? That's wonderful. There was no downside at all. And so we kind of shook hands and he took off. And then it all happened.
In January 1988, I was tenured and in the College of Letters, Arts and Sciences, not in engineering. And my dean became James Knoll. And James Knoll said, it's a great symbolism to do it together with the School of Education. Dennis Smithog and I will be the host and you will be running. And that's how it went.
And 30 years later, he is emailed me to come back and to share with him all of his successes. This is a guy who really strikes very favorable deals. He's my friend. He's a very charming man.
Tonight you'll meet an artist, but he's also a recent resident of the United States. He's Yuri Soifer, a 74-year-old artist who just last year emigrated with his wife to Colorado Springs from the Soviet Union, where they came to join their son, Alexander Soifer, who himself emigrated to the States in 1978 and is now an associate professor of math at the University of Colorado Springs campus. Yuri Soifer's artwork, however, is on display at the UCCS library, and he admits he's been influenced by many of the greats, including fellow Russians such as Kandinsky and Marc Chagall. Anyway, he's no longer harassed because of his beliefs and his religion. He is now truly free.
He couldn't exhibit very many of his works. For instance, he couldn't exhibit religious Jewish works or just memoirs of Jewish village because it would be considered as Zionism, just Zionistic propaganda. He couldn't exhibit works as this Holocaust because it's direct critics of Russian system.
And now, when the influence of my parents is growing instead of diminishing at UCCS, I've been teaching European cinema courses for 20 years. And before that, I taught art history courses on Russian avant-garde art, and next year, a course on African art. So that's when I came back to the arts and parents' influence. first prize goes to John Crockett, Jr., John Wickland's class at Dorothy High School. One of the goals of Colorado Math Olympiad is to give recognition to best mathematicians, to give recognition to the brains. And prizes serve that purpose. It's a symbol that we as a society recognize best brains. I learned from a local newspaper that this legendary Apple computer, Macs, are actually assembled near Colorado Springs. So I decided, no, I'm not a fundraiser, but I sure would like the symbolism. Apple, giving apples to the tree of learning, and they will get apples back when our winners will be their employees or customers using their Mac computers. So I just looked up in a telephone book their address and drove up there. No appointment, no knowledge of names of people who work. I just drove up and entered the building. Your ID, please, was the greeting. I showed my ID, university ID, driver's license. No, Apple computer ID. I said, I don't have that one.
You know, my phone rang and it was the receptionist from the front lobby saying, Greg, there's this interesting, strange little man out here that's talking in a really interesting accent. Something about a math Olympiad, and he wants to talk to somebody. Can you come out and meet with him? So I thought it would probably be a 10-minute conversation. I'd be gracious and listen to what he had to say and find a gracious way to say thank you very much, we're not interested, and move on. An hour and a half later, we had shook hands and agreed to sponsor the effort, and it's been an ongoing relationship since that day. And it's kind of nice to see technology and education kind of find a place where we can connect like that. It's a rare thing.
I believe in the program, and we can reach people that otherwise would be lost in the shuffle.
My middle school math teacher, who's the coach for that math team, she somehow had heard of the Math Olympiad and asked us if we wanted to come. And she said, it's very hard. It's a contest for high school students, but 8th graders are allowed to come too.
I mean, our classic case, of course, is Matt Kale. Now, it's possible that he would have been reached otherwise, but we don't know that. But we do know that he was reached with the Olympiad.
In 8th grade, I think I got a first honorable mention. So I did okay, I guess, as an 8th grader.
But if he hadn't been reached, he'd have just kept plugging along, scraped through high school, probably trapped somewhere in a dead-end job. And the loss would have been tragic, not only for him, but for society.
I had also done well in a few other math contests by that time. But this one was maybe my favorite one to compete in. And it was also, I thought, the hardest. So I was most proud of myself for doing well.
Matt Kale is a prime example, who is a doctoral professor at Ohio State, could not get into this school because his GPA in high school was not high enough. Dr. Sweifer said, you need him in this school. And they, oh no, we have our standards.
We reward legs and arms of Olympic sportsmen, and I applaud that. It's a delight to have an Olympian in your class. But why not reward the brains too and apply the same admission window to Olympiad medalists if a kid won gold, silver, or bronze medal at least once? And so this admission window was signed for the College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences only. If we had this admission window, then Matt Kale would have been UCCS student.
When you sort of multiply all the students who have gotten some sort of prize, some sort of recognition from this by the 30 years that this Olympiad has gone, I think that it's hard to overestimate how many bright young minds in the state of Colorado have been affected by the Olympiad.
There are some other contests that call themselves Olympiads, but it turns out that I could only find one that's even close in the type of problems that it asks of these students. And so I think it is important because it's so rare.
They first started forming universities back in the Middle Ages. Mathematics was part of the tripod upon which it stood.
The earlier you start learning it, the easier it is. And yes, it actually does, affect your brain structure.
One of the main functions of mathematics is it teaches you to think in orderly fashion.
By the time you start leaving your teens, you're not as mentally flexible as you used to be.
Of course, people like to do things that they're good at, right? So that sort of feeds on itself. So somehow I was good at math, and then I ended up doing these contests and winning things, and so that makes you want to do them even more.
Maybe it's planting the seed that will hopefully germinate and give them the determination to continue to pursue.
At this point, I'm looking at getting a PhD in math, and I kind of have that to thank from the Olympiad.
Even if someone only gets a glimpse of it, once or twice, when they're young, coming to the Math Olympiad, maybe that forever changes their view of what mathematics is.
We need that kind of thought process, and we need to encourage it and grow it here in the U.S., and this is one way, at least it's right here in our hometown, that we can see that that's happening, and we need to support it.
The 30th anniversary seemed like a good excuse to come back and visit and grade papers.
I dedicated our 30th Olympiad to the centenary of Paul Erdős's birthday.
To all the winners of the Colorado Mathematical Olympiad, I wish future successes, and I hope they will become mathematicians, preferably pure mathematicians, since I'm a pure mathematician, but my second choice would be computer science or various branches of applied mathematics, or possibly physics or engineering.
This is a guy who went from one mathematician's home to another. And in one bag he had a bag of papers he was working on, in another bag he had his clothes. He would show up at the doorstep of somebody like Dr. Seufer, and he would stay as long as the lady of the house would permit it, and then he would go somewhere else.
Paul was an amazing mathematician. No one in 10,000 year history of mathematics was as great a problem creator as Paul was.
It's always very pleasant to find solution to a problem if you have a really new idea.
And one of 5 problems I dug up from an old research paper by Paul Erdős and included it in the Olympiad as our tribute to him. No one solved that problem. That's all right. A week later I showed the kids the solution.
You are in for a special 30th anniversary treat. This is something that has not occurred in any of the previous 29 years of the Mathematical Olympiad. We have a panel from actually all over the country who have had a connection to this Olympiad. So let's give a welcome to these wonderful panelists. And my first question...
Professor Seufer has made a point to get together a lot of old people from the Olympiad.
It's a group of people coming together, a big family of mathematicians who have some tie to this Colorado Math Olympiad, some over the span of decades, some like myself just new, just a couple years into it, and yet it feels like a big family coming together.
All these people have graded exams so many times, and they graded my exams when I was in high school, and now I grade papers together with them, and now it feels like we're old friends.
So many things like this are so tied to a personality that the personality gets old, goes away, and the idea dies. And I'm hoping not, but it's hard to say.
I'm worried what will happen when Dr. Seufer retires. And because it's very much, his baby. There's certainly no sign of anyone taking it over.
The future. I don't know. I wanted to retire. I'm romantic, so I thought, wouldn't it be beautiful to retire in Italy? But I long abandoned that idea of retirement, unless I must. If I can walk, I have always walked to classroom.
Professor Soifer is someone who sort of grew up with the Russian Olympiad sort of style of competition, and he's just put so much energy and time into this, and he's such a great composer of problems. It's hard to imagine the Olympiad without him.
Well, I would like UCCS to get a young scholar who is passionate enough, fanatical enough, crazy enough to join the Olympiad and be groomed to run with it.
So my hope now is just that it continues indefinitely, and that someone eventually sort of rises to that occasion of continuing to organize it and continuing to compose problems so that the tradition can continue.
Winners of this Olympiad are now professors at University of California, Berkeley, University of Southern California, Ohio State, Penn State, and other great places.
I think it's incredibly special that Dr. Soifer has been leading and managing the Soifer Math Olympiad for the past 40 years, and I'm so excited to see what the next 10 years will do for this. It's truly a testament to the fact that Dr. Soifer cares so much about students, especially young students who are just getting interested and curious about math, and he gives them a way to express that, find friends, and find a path forward for their future in mathematics.
I inspire kids who are future leaders, and that matters to me. Remember the one who came through to your inner self first. This elderly man or a woman of wit and vacation, and dropped on my ball and I followed him as he posed. And sweet was the instant and lasting was this convocation. I carry that spark, that baton that he placed on my palm. His hope and his gaze at the book that he thought was transfinite. And feel I my way to the book with heart threatening calm. And lives he in me in continuous this infinite drama.